This is part 3 of my Phantasy Star franchise retrospective. I highly recommend that you watch the first 2 parts, otherwise some of this stuff isn't going to make any sense to you. With all of that said, let's not waste any more time and continue with where we last left off. Tony, I am going fucking insane. I'm going fucking insane, bro.
What's going on, man?
Okay, so I think I told you some time ago that I was like doing some fucking follow-up videos to like Phantasy Star, fucking Saga Wars, that shit, and I missed out on several things, and I was like thinking, okay, it's gonna be a mobile game, it's gonna be a PS Vita game, it's gonna be a stage play, and then I'm done. It's gonna be like 5 minutes. I was wrong, because, so, there is a fucking drama CD about like propaganda or some shit, and then there's fucking manga which had like 2 chapters spread across 3.5 volumes of magazines which have never been scanned properly aside from like 2 of them, and then there's fucking 3 choose your own adventure books.
You want to play the Choose Your Own Adventure book?
Yeah, kinda.
Alright, let's go.
We proceeded to spend like 2 hours reading these books together, and I regret nothing. These are the Phantasy Star Gamebooks, a trilogy of choose-your-own-adventure stories based on Phantasy Star 1, 2, and 3 respectively. I'm not a booktuber, but I'll try my best to boil down the concept of these kinds of books. Essentially, as you read, you'll periodically come across divergent points where you, the reader, are forced to make a choice. Think of it as the precursor to visual novels. You do this by going to the specified page tied to your decision. More often than not, making a wrong choice will just lead you back to the last divergence, as you'll either die or prematurely end the story in some other way. I used to read a lot of these back when I was a kid, especially horror ones, so going through the PS ones was kind of a nostalgic experience for me in a way. The art is really nice in all 3 of them, reminding me a lot of anime and manga from the 80s, which yes, I know is to be expected when you consider that that's when these things came out, but I really happen to like this aesthetic. The illustrations really help in making these scenes from the game substantially more impactful and interesting, especially ones like Nei's death, which were supposed to be big deals in the games but really weren't due to technical limitations and a lack of sufficient character building. If you happen to know any Japanese and want to feel like a kid again, then I honestly recommend checking them out. They're surprisingly entertaining. Now we're getting to some of the things that I legitimately had no idea existed when I first started researching this video series, starting with Phantasy Star Outside Saga. This is a short, unfinished manga that had its chapters published in the Saga Players and George Club magazine, or SPEC for short. For context, it is the same magazine in which both the other unfinished manga Phantasy Star 3rd and the Phantasy Star 3 gag comics were released, as well as lots of non-Phantasy Star comics. The manga, or rather what little exists of it, functions as a sort of sequel to Phantasy Star 1, with Lutz and Alice as the leads, while Meow and Odin are nowhere to be seen. Basically, the 2 of them end up traveling the galaxy only to get stuck on a foreign star system, where everyone is super racist or some shit. While there, they meet a man named Gardenin, who proceeds to help them out. The art is really nice, making for pretty neat action scenes too. The setup is also super interesting, and I wish we could have seen what the story would have turned into. Unfortunately, the story was cut short at just 3 chapters, because SPEC ended up being discontinued not long after it began, leading to the cancellation of all the ongoing manga in it. However, that fate thankfully didn't befall every Phantasy Star story featured in it, which leads me to our next topic. Phantom Cities is one of the few short manga, if you can even call them that released in SPEC that was actually finished. It's 3 chapters long and serves as a prequel to the first game, following the life of Lutz from when he was 11 years old up until when he joins your party in the game, which is when the manga ends. It honestly serves more as an origin story for why he wears a headdress more than it does anything else. Not that there's anything wrong with that, mind you, as it is done quite well for its runtime. Truth be told, I hate the artwork, something about it is just really off-putting to me, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Regardless, the fact that this thing exists to begin with is pretty damn cool, even if tracking it down can be a bit of a pain in the ass. For anyone wanting to do so, all of Phantom Cities and Outside Saga can be found in SPEC volumes 5 through 8. You can thank me later. Next up, we have a drama CD with Project Dream ARKS. It consists of 10 chapters of around 45 minutes in total, with a bonus track that serves as a bit of commentary from the drama's cast. It's about Zeno, Affin, and Echo just kinda fucking around and interviewing a bunch of ARKS members who occasionally have some silly segments of their own, such as Franca hosting a cooking show. It's pretty fun all things considered, and one of the better drama CDs that I've listened to for these videos, though that bar is really not that high. If you understand Japanese and happen to like PSO2, then I would at the very least recommend checking out the first 2 chapters of it or so, as that's like 4 minutes long, so you really can't go too wrong with it. And thus, we reached a part of the video that has by far been the biggest pain in the ass to get through. I ran it through several devices and none of them were able to run it in a way that would make for even remotely usable footage. In fact, I don't even know if the footage you're seeing right now is from the same account I was using when I was writing the script. I had to make a new one at least 5 times so far. Where was I again? Alright, yeah, shitty video games. So, PSO2 ES is a gacha that is meant to be played alongside regular PSO2, with players on Japanese servers being able to transfer and obtain stuff from one version to the other. Surprisingly enough, it has a pretty decent fan translation, and is still being actively supported after 8 years. Unfortunately, you would not be able to tell that was the case from just looking at it, because boy is it ugly, even for mobile game standards. At least this game has some right to exist, unlike Idola though, so I will give it a pass. It follows a story that happens concurrently to the game's main episodes, but the cast is almost entirely original. For obvious reasons, it's also not an action RPG like the main game either. You point and tap. That's the entire gameplay system. Just tap the enemies repeatedly to attack. Sometimes swiping left or right to dodge. It's mindlessly simple. The gacha aspects are thankfully localized entirely to the special moves you can use mid-battle, which function like every special ability in any gacha ever made. In between battles, you have to progress through the level by selecting one of 3 paths, which all give you different bonuses for a level, sometimes also putting you into a battle. It's an interesting way of attempting to replicate the PSO2 stage progression, to say the least. Can't say I'm particularly fond of it though. Out of the many classes in PSO2, only 8 are available, being Hunter, Fighter, Force, Tector, Ranger, Gunner, Braver, and Bouncer. But they are all fundamentally the same because of how the game plays. Other than the gacha system, there's also a regular dice roll minigame for gambling, which I'm sure at least one unhinged gambling addict is happy to hear. Man, I really do not like these character designs. All of them are either super uncomfortable to look at or just plain ugly. I've seen a lot of really shitty designs, but I think these might just take the cake when it comes to Phantasy Star ones. Frankly, this game sucks and I don't recommend playing it. It is better than Idola though, so that's good I guess? 2 things up front about Nova. Firstly, it does in fact have an English translation. Secondly, none of the footage of this game in this video is my own. I usually try to record everything myself, but I just couldn't find a way to record the Vita which I was playing this on, which wasn't even mine to begin with. I borrowed it from a friend. Links to the original videos in the description. This game is a funny case because it wasn't actually developed by Saga but by Tri-Ace, whom you may know as the creators of Valkyrie Profile and Star Ocean, both of which being series I'll definitely be making retrospectives on in the future. The gameplay is fundamentally identical to PSO2. It does have some differences though. For instance, your character can take visible battle damage, which is reflected by torn or damaged clothes. By far the most noteworthy thing about the game is the heavy focus on story, with the multiplayer feeling like an afterthought. I mean hell, you may as well call it PSO2 Offline Edition, as redundant as that may sound. There's also a big focus on killing giant boss monsters called Gigants, which can also be summoned to attack other enemies once defeated. It's a really cool concept with a great sense of scale. Unfortunately, it does have some issues. The camera can be downright abysmal during Gigants fights, doing basically whatever the fuck it wants, and melee is essentially entirely useless against them, as you'll never be able to properly and consistently target their weak spots with it, so you may as well be doing no damage whatsoever. But at the very least the story is pretty interesting. As usual, the soundtrack is also fantastic, and it's generally a very solid entry. However, I would definitely not recommend it over something like say Portable 2 or even Online Classic. Furthermore, it's permanently stuck on the PS Vita, which just helps to cripple its potential player base even more, as up until August 2020, PSO2 itself was also available on Vita, entirely for free. And so, we get to the thing that made me make this video to begin with, the stage play PSO2 on stage. I didn't originally include it as I just wasn't able to find any recordings of it myself. And then Saga themselves casually uploaded the entire thing to YouTube on their own as part of the PSO2 10th anniversary campaign. So I guess that just kind of happened. I finally managed to watch it and my findings were truly extraordinary because guess what? It kinda fucking sucks. It follows this everyday guy called Toki and his friend Yumi, and wouldn't you know it, it's once again connected to episode 4. Despite having a pretty decent cast, the acting is frankly terrible, which just goes to show how important good direction is for these things. The background changes in the PSO2 world are done entirely via projection changes on a screen that just look laughably bad, and other times a single character will come on stage and start fighting the air until the lights fade before a scene transition. It's really fucking weird. What doesn't help is that the choreography is sometimes really bland and uninteresting. It says a lot about your play when the most interesting thing that happens in it is when a guy does a backflip. The story sucks, the characters can get really annoying at times, and when they don't they're super uninteresting, and The costumes look abysmal. They're recognizable, sure, but they're far from good. It's worth a skim through if you want to watch it, but I don't recommend watching the entire thing, especially if you don't know any Japanese. There's just nothing of value to be found here whatsoever. And last, but maybe also least, we have the webcomic Central, which functions as a sort of PSO2 Komi from the perspective of NGS's NPCs. Apparently it had already existed for like 3 months before I even uploaded the modern Phantasy Star Retrospective, so how I missed it is beyond me. Whatever the case, the comedy here is very hit or miss. Some of the jokes were surprisingly pretty alright, such as the NPCs being fully aware of player arcs jumping onto roofs and all over the place, and having measures in place for that, while others just fall flat completely. Thankfully, it never even gets close to being as bad as Komi, and it stands as a pretty fine gag webcomic on its own. And with that, we are done for the third time. Should enough material come out, or it turns out that I missed something, then I'll be sure to make a third part in this little series. With all of that said though, do me a favor here and have a fantastic morning, day, evening, or night. Cheers.